Wisconsin Eye is interviewing candidates in the special election in the 42nd Assembly District. Jon Plumer of Lodi is one of 4 Republican candidates. The primary is May 15th and the general election is June 12th. John, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thanks for the invite. I very much appreciate it.
Now, I understand, according to your intro on YouTube, you drove a route for Kraft Foods for a few decades.
That's correct.
And then you opened a karate shop, a store.
Yes.
So you're a small businessman.
Yes.
Is that a big reason why you're running, the needs of small businesses?
Well, part of it, absolutely. And those two did overlap. I did drive truck and own a karate school at the same time. But as a small business owner, certainly I understand the issues that we have to deal with on a day in and day out basis, including, taxes, making payroll and jobs and so forth. But really being a father and a grandfather are what really motivated me to get involved in this race and hopefully work in the legislature. Not only their future, but my grandchildren's future and generations beyond. I'd like to make a difference.
Well, you said in that same video that you introduced yourself that you really care about the rural communities. Mm-hmm. What are the biggest needs of those rural communities in the 42nd, sir?
Well, I've knocked on a lot of doors in the last 5 weeks, and the number one issue I hear is transportation, is roads. Clearly, we have some work to do on our roads and bridges. That's the main thing that comes up in my conversations with the constituents of the 42nd.
Well, in the capital, there's been an impasse now going for 2 or 3 years on how we pay for our highways. How would you pay for them, sir?
Well, I don't think I'm a user fee kind of guy. So I drive my vehicle around. I know that those roads are important not only to me personally, but also from a business standpoint and transportation overall. So I'd be open to gas tax increase, probably that over a raise in licensing. But mm-hmm. I'm open to both options. But clearly we have to get caught up, and we're going to need some more revenue for that.
Some leaders have expressed an interest in tolling. Have you been asked about tolling? Do you have a position on it?
I'm not in favor of it at this time.
Okay. A big issue in the fall elections is the tax incentives for Foxconn. Now, the state incentives are $2.85 billion if they hit their development and hiring goals.
Correct.
Would you have voted for that package?
I believe I would, because I think it's both an opportunity and an investment. And I like the way it's structured. Now, clearly, they have some triggers that they have to hit in order for that funding to kick in. Mm-hmm. But the upside of the Foxconn deal is enormous, not only in that region, but statewide for economic impact. The ancillary opportunities for jobs and spending in the entire state are enormous. So if everything comes to fruition, it should be huge.
Okay. Another thing you say on your website is you've been, firsthand of the experience with the lack of affordable health care. Talk about your health care experience and lessons learned.
Sure. Well, when I retired from Kraft in 2011, I had worked 30 years to earn my retirement benefits, and one of those was health care. Mm-hmm. And so it was very affordable when I retired, and my wife and I being small business owners, that's huge for us, is to be able to have health care. With the Affordable Care Act kicking in a couple of years later, our health care premiums more than doubled to the point where we just could not manage that. So my wife re-entered the workforce, which does a couple things. It takes her out of our business, which is important, but it also takes a job that somebody else could have had. So health care is a huge issue of mine.
Yeah, you say you believe in health care coverage for everyone. How could Wisconsin get to that?
Well, I think Wisconsin's doing a nice job with Badger Care, covering people that are in between plans or in a situation where they don't have any coverage. The one thing I'm concerned about, and I think a lot of people share this, I'm hearing from at doors, is that they don't want this to be a hammock. Mm-hmm. We are more than happy to help people that need it. And everybody should have that, but we want to. Personally, I would like to see people have the opportunity to get up off of those programs and become self-sufficient. But I think Badger Care is doing a nice job covering people that are currently without coverage.
Do you support some of what the governor recently got approved? You would drug test some of those on public benefits. and you would increase the number of hours they'd have to work for food share or food stamps? Do you support
Well,
that?
I like both of them, and I'll tell you why. Because number one, the drug testing, I submitted to DOT drug testing for 30 years at my job. I never complained about it. I knew it was part of the program, and I was absolutely fine with it. Sometimes it interrupted my day because we had random. At the same time, I think the second part of that question is a great step up for people to get up and become self-sufficient. And anything we can do to help, clearly people who are providing for themselves and for their families just naturally feel better about who they are. I have no problem giving people a step up and a hand up, but I think the second part of that question is clearly headed in that direction.
There's also a debate in the Capitol over what's been called the dark store controversies. The assessment, or what should closed retailers, restaurants, banks be assessed at? Do you think we need to pass some bills in the Capitol on that issue?
Clearly, we have some work to do there. It's an issue that has really come out of nowhere the last couple of years, and it needs to be addressed. As a town supervisor, I'm fully understanding of how important our real estate taxes are, but they need to be fair and equitable. So this is certainly a topic that needs to be addressed in Madison.
So you're a member of the Town of Lodi board?
That's correct.
How long have you been on the board?
I just started my second term.
Okay. Which gets me to this question. The changes in Act 10 were controversial, with collective bargaining and making state employees pay more for pensions and health care. Do you generally support the Act 10 changes?
Well, Wisconsin, last time I heard, was one of only 3 states in the country whose retirement benefits are fully funded. As a state employee, that would make me sleep better at night. But I've never worked for the state, and I just talked to somebody about this the other day. We have 2 daughters who are school teachers, and my wife works for the state. But I asked my girls about that back when Act 10 was passed.
Yeah.
I said, how do you feel about that as state employees? And they both said to me, Dad, we know this is going to cost us some money, but a couple of things, I feel like I should be contributing more to both my insurance and my retirement. But they said, most importantly, this is going to ensure that my retirement is sound when I get to that point. So while I understand that it was controversial to say the least, I think in the long run it's really it's created stability for state employees.
Well, you've got two of your daughters teach in the public schools?
That's correct.
Well, how do they feel? Well, more importantly, how do you feel, because you're the candidate, about our level of K-12 funding? Is it enough? Do we need to increase it again? This current budget increased it, but your feeling on how we're paying for our schools?
Well, there's no question we have to continue to increase our funding for public schools. In the Lodi area specifically, we work very closely in our karate school with our school teachers. We actually require the school teachers to sign off on our students promoting. So because we're trying to make sure that they're not only wonderful at the karate school, but at home and at school as well. So I fully understand how well our public schools do. We have great schools in the 42nd Assembly District. Clearly, we need to continue to fund those. I did talk to somebody the other day about when we were talking about education. I think we need to continue to look at different ways to fund the public school system. Instead of continuously arguing about how much or how, I think we need to come together as a group and find a way to more equitably fund our public schools.
Do you think our public schools are too reliant on property taxes?
Well, I think if that's the biggest complaint, because I'm hearing at the doors, people are concerned. They're concerned about their property taxes going up, especially the older folks. And as I'm knocking on that door, I clearly understand that. People want to be able to stay in their homes. So that's an issue that we need to take a look at, I believe.
The choice program, the voucher program, has grown. It started out in the city of Milwaukee. It went to Racine. Now it's statewide. Should it be expanded further? What's your position on the choice program?
I'm comfortable with the way it is now. I think, the public schools do great. No question about it. My girls all graduated from public high schools. Our grandchildren currently are enrolled in public high schools, or schools, not high schools, thank God they're not that old yet. But the ones that are old enough to be in school are in public schools. So I'm a believer in the public school system. But there are parts of the state where we have failing schools. As a parent, I would like to have that option. Now, if I need to pull my child out of a failing school, how am I going to pay for that? So I think there is definitely a place for the voucher system.
The UW system, there's a debate over resident undergrad tuition has been frozen for 6 years. Do you think the freeze should continue?
I do. As a taxpayer, I was concerned when I heard that the university system had money squirreled away. To me, that just means as a business owner, if I'm doing that, I have more than enough revenue coming in. So you hear continuously about complaints about the cost of tuition. I think a tuition freeze, if I was a university student or a parent paying for a university student, I'd be thrilled.
Okay. The whole debate over safe schools has engendered, as you know, a debate over gun laws. Do we need to change any of Wisconsin's gun laws?
I'm a big believer in local control. I'm a fan of local school boards. I'm thrilled that the governor and the legislature set aside $100 million this last session for school districts to take advantage of that and figure out how to make their students safer. In our karate school, what we do is we prepare our students for the worst scenario with their self-defense skills, hoping that they never have to use it. I believe preparation is 99.9% of protecting our students. So I'm hoping that every school district in the state applies for these grants and uses that money to better, whatever their choices are, to better safeguard our children in the schools.
I'm intrigued by your karate schools. What life skills do they teach your students?
Oh my gosh. Well, I always tell parents when they come in the door, what do you teach here? And I said, well, about half of what we teach is physical. It's martial arts. The other half, and clearly I think the most important part that we teach are the life skills of respect and focus and self-discipline and responsibility. I had a mom, and this was years ago, come in my office, and she sat down. She said, "Mr. P, I need to talk to you." And I said, "What's the problem?" She goes, "Well, we got home last night, and Jimmy went in and cleaned his room without being asked." And I said, "What's the problem?" She said, "Well, there's no problem. I just wanted to tell somebody." So.
You recently took your black belts and had them clean up highways.
We do that twice a year. We promote black belts in the spring and the fall, and one of the things we do is we pick a Saturday morning. We have an adopted highway right outside of Lodi. My wife are incredibly involved in the community, which I think everybody should be. But we take our black belt candidates out there, and we spend 2 or 3 hours, and we walk that road, and we pick up every cigarette butt, every beer can, everything that's laying out there. I want them to be invested in their community, and I want them to learn at a young age to give back to their community.
And the number one reason you got in this race?
Number one reason, wow. I think giving back. I think being involved. My dad always said, if you're not willing to get involved, then don't complain. And when Keith Ripp took the job in the Department of Agriculture and that seat opened up, my wife and I talked long and hard about, is this the next step we should take? I've loved being on the town board. I'm involved in the community. The 42nd district is perfect for me because it's all small towns. I love every town I go into and knock doors. The faces are different, but the people are the same. Their needs are the same. Their concerns are the same. It's a great district, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
The primary, you're in a 4-way primary on May 15th.
Correct.
Do you want to highlight any differences between you and your other 3 opponents?
I don't know them very well. I just met them last Wednesday at a candidate forum. They all seem like wonderful men and women. I can't really comment on them because I don't know them very well, like I said. But I can tell you what I think qualifies me to be the state representative from the 42nd is the way my wife way we involve ourselves in our community, the way we give, the way we volunteer, and we never do that for awards. We never, when we started doing this years ago, we never once thought about running for office. We just thought it was the right thing to do. So I think because of the fact that we're heavily invested in where we live, and I feel the same way about the 42nd. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected to that seat, I'm going to live in the 42nd the same way I live in the city of Lodi and the town of Lodi.
Okay. Are you familiar with the record of your potential Democratic opponent if you win the primary? Any differences with her you want to highlight?
In fact, I just met her for the first time last Wednesday. Yeah, it's funny. I've lived in Lodi for 10 years. I've never met her. I knew her dad pretty well from Optimist Club, and a great guy, her late father. But I've never met her before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other issues that's central to your campaign I haven't asked you about? I want to give you another chance. I want to give you a chance to bring them up. Anything else?
Roads is clearly number one. These are the things I'm hearing at the door. Roads and my property taxes, health care certainly is still an issue that we need to address. But overall, I just want to be involved. I'm a hands-on guy. I write all my own thank you cards to people who are sending me $5 donations. I'm the kind of guy that if I'm elected will return my own phone calls. I like people. My favorite part of this campaign has been knocking on doors, and I've worn out one pair of tennis shoes already. But I will tell you that it's my favorite part because it's the interaction and the handshake and the conversation.
Just one more question. You also said that we need a better, quote, safety net. Do you want to explain that? You remember that on your website?
Yeah. Well, I think we've really covered that.
Okay.
That's a lot of different areas, I think. But number one, and I talked about this with my children, my grandchildren. I want to make sure that their future is as bright as it can possibly be. And I think that encompasses a lot of different areas.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. Jon Plumer of Lodi is one of 4 Republican candidates in the May 15th primary in the 42nd Assembly District. The general election is June 12th. Jon, thanks so much for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks.